Welcome to the Broncos Podcast with Troy Renck. I am your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post. I am back in Kansas City. Took a wrong turn somewhere on I-70. I look up, Siri's not working. Google Maps stinks, and I'm back in the luxurious Fairfield Inn in Kansas City. I am here for CUKU. I haven't forgotten about you, Broncos country. We got some news breaking too, as Broncos first ever. They're making history, not with Bo Nix. Been his week though. First ever Thursday night game flex. Broncos Chargers moving now to December 19th instead of that Sunday, December 23rd. It's really cool that the Broncos are actually viewed as a national team again, viewed as appropriate for a national audience after a few years of being shoved aside after the Russell Wilson disaster, where people literally were poking out their eyeballs with rusty forks. But it sucks for fans if you had plans. So I feel for you as someone who's traveled the country the last 15, 20 years of my life, both professionally and then personally for my son's baseball teams. It stinks when you got to change travel at the last minute, especially around Christmas time. So really cool. And you're asking, Troy, how did they do this? Well, and we'll get into more about the specific game, but I know this is kind of the news element. The Broncos had to waive it because you cannot have two Thursday road games. And as you remember, they had the home sweet dome for Sean Payton in New Orleans earlier this season. So the Broncos waived it, which is a little surprising just because it feels like a disadvantage to play on a short week. But maybe they feel like, that's when the Chargers could be worn down and you're coming out by and you feel like your rest gives you an advantage. Clearly, the Broncos feel like it's still an advantage. They wouldn't have waived it. But they had to waive it to be flexed to that because they'd already had a Thursday night road game. So there you have it. That's the news of the day. We'll have more on CUKU. That'll be Saturday, and I'm hoping to finally see a win at Arrowhead for the first time since 2015. But beyond all that, we got a big Broncos game. Broncos trying to turn Sin City into Win City. See what I did there? And they have to. I mean, let's just keep it real. If you're going to be a playoff team and you're 6-5 right now, you've made progress, changed the culture, kind of changed the attitude around the team. Fans are starting to be believers. You can't lose to the Raiders. You can't lose to the Raiders. You whipped them at home, but do you realize the Broncos have never won in Las Vegas since the Raiders moved? That spans since 2019? I know 2020 because I was at the COVID game. This is a game that if you're a good team, you beat bad teams. If you are a contender, you step your foot on the chest of a team like the Raiders, who have 2 wins this season. And their biggest goal right now feels like to try to get position to get Shedeur Sanders, speaking of CU. But the Broncos v. Raiders. So they're back on national TV. That'll be 3 national appearances. Thursday night, Saints. Monday night, Browns. And then Thursday night, Chargers. For those of you changing plans, I feel for you. If you want to DM me on my Twitter at Troy Renck and tell me kind of how you're dealing with it, I do feel for you. But from a national perspective, it is showing some respect finally to the Broncos. And now you got to take care of business. Now it's about handling the accolades, handling the prosperity, which this team has not been good with the last 3-4 years. Any chance it felt like their blinker was on and they were turning the corner, they got T-boned at the intersection. So is this time going to be different? How is it different? How does this matchup look? Let's get to all of that after the break. Have you been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work? Are you waiting? Well, why? Get my friends at Hoggett Injury Law a call. Their motto with us is personal. I've known Darby Hoggett forever. We became good friends watching our sons grow up playing baseball and basketball. Many of Darby's clients become his good friends, and you don't even have to pay Darby up front. If your case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. Again, if you've been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work, give Darby a call. That's 1-833-HOGGATT. That's 1-833-HOGGET. Or visit the website at hoggettlaw.com. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC, and even MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Well, again, welcome back to the Broncos Podcast with Troy Renck. I'm your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post. A couple of quick things, some housekeeping. If you haven't had a chance, I would encourage you to read a column I wrote on Sean Payton that appeared in Thursday's paper. Sean Payton and his wife, Skylene, made a $150,000 donation to the Children's Hospital Colorado. And the reasons Sean did that are tied to an experience with a pediatric cancer patient in New Orleans who passed away. And it's a poignant story he tells, but it had also this donation. It was he's got a lot of money. Again, a lot of people have a lot of money and don't donate. And the reason he's donated, you can see in the column, but also it shows that he's not passing through anymore, folks. He's embedding himself in this community. He and his wife in year 2 are clearly more comfortable here. Obviously, Sean's been a different person since the spring when he moved on from Russell Wilson and he was re-energized by coaching a young, hungry team with his quarterback that he handpicked. But again, the donation is part of him and part of he and his wife really starting to, feel like they're one of us. They're from Colorado now. He's no longer the Saints coach coaching the Broncos. And to donate this money to build a playground for Children's Hospital is really cool. And I say that because it's personal. My wife and I, our youngest son, Brady, spent 8 days in Children's Hospital 16 years ago with a staph infection. And I mean, there were about 30 minutes there. We thought we were going to lose him one night when he got rushed down from our house with like 104-degree fever, and nobody knows what's going on. And the hazmat crew comes in, and next thing you know, he's in emergency surgery. And with, they're deeming life-saving surgery. And I can just tell you, the folks at Children's Hospital do the work of angels. And our situation was minor compared to what a lot of the diagnoses are there. And this playground can help kids kind of suspend reality, go there and kids be kids, and because it's tough. Any of you that have, most of us have had a hospital experience, either personal or a friend, relative, and to have this kind of situation for kids to be able to play in a playground in the back of the hospital with some privacy and kind of feel like they're a kid again. Really cool. So that column's in there if you want to check it out. And the point of the column was just, it's a side of Sean Payton we rarely see. I mean, rarely. His factory setting is abrasive. Let's be honest. And the side he shows the media, I mean, he's antagonistic. He's sarcastic. He can be an asshole. That's who Sean is. I respect it because he's consistent. I love the consistency from him. This story came to me. He was reluctant to talk about it, but I do think it's worth a read just because of, why he does it and what it means for he and his wife as they kind of embed themselves more in this community. And I think that's a good sign. So much talk about Deion Sanders and whether he'll stay or go. And this year, for the first time, it really feels like Sean Payton, for me, is really a part of the Broncos. He's a culture he's established, but he's now part of the Broncos. Feels like, again, like he's one of us. Like he's living in Colorado. He's not just an interloper who's vacationing here. So I encourage you to check it out. But again, all that said, Peyton would be the first to tell you it's about winning. And the fact that they're 6-5 is encouraging. I picked him to win 6 games this season. So, I mean, he's already achieved that goal. But now I reserve the right, because I have new information, to reframe expectations. The AFC stinks this year. The playoff berth is in front of them, folks. They're ahead of the Colts. They're ahead of the Bengals. They're ahead of the Dolphins. All these teams, we thought the Jets, people thought, I didn't think the Jets would be good, but certainly some did. All these teams aren't very good. And if you're the Broncos and you want to avoid what could be like a play-in game against Cincinnati at Cincinnati, that's tough. Now, maybe that's part of why the Broncos moved this Chargers game. Is if that becomes a play-in type game, it gives you extra time to prepare and recover because you play Thursday night, and then you go to Cincinnati and what could be a basically an elimination game with the Bengals. But it comes back to the Raiders. If that game is going to matter, you cannot lose to the Raiders, and you can't lose to them in Vegas. And frankly, these games haven't been particularly competitive. Last year, Sean Payton made it a very obvious and blatant goal that, hey, I want to win this last game of the season, have a winning record, even though they were essentially eliminated from the playoffs. He really wanted a winning record, and they went out there and absolutely stepped on a rake. Can't happen this year. Raiders, they're always feisty under Antonio Pierce, but they're not very good. And that's why, can this team handle success, handle prosperity? Because in the past, anytime they had it with Vic Fangio, 7-7, they lose out. Vance Joseph, I think it was 6-6, lose out. This is that point. Last year they were 6-5 and ended up 8-9. But this year should be different because of Bo Nix, because of this defense, because of the culture. It should be different. But how do you handle success? Really, it's basically going about your business, not believing what people are telling about you. I mean, it is laughable. I had a national writer call me the other day. He's like, the Broncos are worried about prosperity. Aren't they 6-5? I'm like, that is prosperity around here. That's what prosperity looks like. They haven't been dominant since 2015. You know, I mean, so, but with Payton, he has a knack for, and again, it's going to be tested again. The better they do, the grumpier he gets. He never wants them to be comfortable. And last year when he tried that, it didn't work with this roster. But there's more of his type of guys. Football guys, grinders, all ball in the building, business, business, business. The more guys you have like that, the better chance you have of them handling prosperity. And when you look at this matchup with the Raiders, we know Bo Nix, he's collected more hardware than Home Depot this week. Every time I look up, the guy's winning another award. And I'm not going to just sit here and pat myself on the back. I've been a guy who's pushed Bo, and I thought it would work because of the fit with Sean Payton. I'm not someone who sit here. And I do find it weird that some people still dig in as Bo Nix haters. Like, frankly, you look stupid now. Like, I get you're saying you don't want to completely buy in because you don't like the ceiling. But to say he hasn't played well, come on now. You sound like that JV parent whose kids, like the kid in front of him is hitting 500, 3 home runs, and your kid's hitting 240 and leads the team in hit by pitches. And the sun gets in his eyes. He faces better pitchers. His batting gloves won't work. Like, enough. Stop with the qualifiers and the excuses. The kid's playing well. He's playing well. The last 7 weeks, he's playing well. 13 touchdowns, 2 picks, not turning the ball over. Obviously, as he said on Wednesday, he has, and it was a very grown-up answer when we talk about the Bo Show, he and Sean Payton are in rhythm. When he said, what was the key to playing better over this streak? Slow the game down. And the game is slowed down because of his preparation, which every player I talk to about him says the same thing. He's so damn competitive, and he will call guys out. I mean, he's going to put in the work in the weight room, in the film room, at practice, and he's starting to get his voice where he's not afraid. And he's not, acting like he's accomplished something, but he knows he's a quarterback and a captain, and he's competitive, really competitive. So that's driving him. But Sean Payton has put him in position to succeed along with Davis Webb and Joe Lombardi, where before it was clear Bo was not comfortable the first month of the season. And I blame Payton on that because he was trying to make him Drew Brees. Now they run stuff that's easier. 1 or 2 reads, boom, it's not there. And because it's easier, he's processing faster. And as he processes faster, he's more accurate. Because when you're processing faster, your feet and mechanics get more relaxed. You're in time, you're in sync, and suddenly you're throwing the ball well. And he is. He's right around 67% since these last 7 weeks. But what is it about the Raiders matchup we should look for? Because the Bo Show should have a day. And here's why. The Raiders, folks, bring up and conjure memories of the Falcons last week. They struggle beyond Max Crosby to get pressure on the quarterback. And that's why I'm going to look at some stats here and let you know that the Raiders defensively, they're not great. I mean, they're not bad, but they're not great. They've had 0 fumble recoveries, 5 takeaways. That's the worst in the NFL. That's good, because Bo Nix doesn't put the ball in trouble, doesn't put it in harm's way much. And even if he were to, are we sure the Raiders are going to intercept it? They've got 5 picks and no fumble recoveries. And you say, well, they got Max Crosby. They do. And you have to account for him. He writes a diary of havoc. You realize they only have 19 sacks, tied for 27? And Crosby, a lot of times, is a one-man show. And I just can't imagine Sean Payton and crew not chipping him. Because there's really no one else that can beat you. There's really no one else that can beat you. And that is a situation that is so fascinating to me because you'd think with Crosby, somebody else would be eating, and they're not. They're not eating. And so they have 19 sacks. By comparison, you say, is that really a low number? Well, yeah, it's 27th in the league. The Broncos have 39, folks. They rank first. But that's a 20 sack difference between the Raiders and Broncos. Third down percentage, the Raiders aren't very good, allowed at 41%. Red zone percentage, 66%, rounded up. 26th, that's 26th in the league. This is a team that you can get right against offensively. And the Broncos have been developing an absolute momentum in that direction. When you look at the offense, they're up to 21 points a game. That's 20th, but they've been better. Net passing a game, they're almost at 200 yards now. The rushing is 116. So Denver's become a pretty average offensive team, but obviously trending in the right direction. They protect the ball. They don't give up sacks. This is the kind of game that you should be able to get the run game going to set up the pass and the play action. That's the one missing element with Bo Nix that we haven't seen. He's been much better over the middle of the field. He's been much better in terms of accuracy over the middle of the field, but we haven't seen the deep strikes. We've seen play action to Cortland Sutton, but not deep. I think this is the week you're going to see Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, Valey, one of those other receivers outside of Sutton catch a deep ball off of play action. That's really the final piece of this. And how Bo plays will go a long way in determining how this offense plays and probably how they win. But I do think you can beat this team with defense alone. But Bo Nix, he's the guy, when you look back to these two headlines, Handling Success and the Bo Show. Bo Nix, again, has been like the highest rated quarterback since he was in 8th grade. We talk about Juju Lewis coming to CU. That's how highly rated Bo Nix was, basically coming out of high school as a dual threat. He was going to be the Tim Tebow of Auburn. This kid has dealt with expectations. He's dealt with really high success as a freshman at Auburn, crazy failure, and then almost won the Heisman Trophy last year at Oregon. People forget that. Jaden Daniels won it as he should, but Bo Nix was right there. And it was interesting, a couple of the national shows of like, if we redrafted the quarterbacks now, where would Bo go? And most of them say, well, he wouldn't go any higher. I disagree. He'd obviously be ahead of McCarthy because McCarthy's hurt, and now he's had a setback in his knee recovery. So now he's no longer the 6th quarterback taken. He's clearly ahead of Penix and McCarthy. And the love for Drake May has been fascinating to me, that, you know, people are ready to anoint him the next Josh Allen. I'm not there on that. I would certainly, Jaden Daniels was my guy coming out of the draft, and I think he would have been great here. And if I'm being honest, if you say I could have Caleb Williams with Sean Payton or Bo Nix, I'm not going to sit here and say I wouldn't take Caleb Williams given how much I loved him coming out of college. But I would say it'd be like Jaden Daniels and then flip a coin of who would be the next quarterback off the board for me between Nix and Caleb Williams. And again, we're tainted because Caleb's been really bad in Chicago, and he's already on his 2nd offensive coordinator, and his head coach is going to be fired. But I don't think Bo Nix is given it enough credit, this idea that it's just Sean Payton. Fit matters, folks, but come on now. Let's give a little credit to our guy. He's playing well. We have plenty of time to criticize these guys when they're not playing well. Nix is playing well. But the Bo Show sets up against the Raiders to be able to have a productive day. When you look at a Raiders team that just does not produce takeaways, they don't intercept the ball, they don't sack the quarterback, they don't pressure the quarterback, who does that sound like? Oh, wait, the Falcons. And you saw what they did against the Falcons. So it's time for the Broncos. Remember, the first tiebreaker is AFC record, and the Broncos have a losing record in the AFC right now. You got to take care of business. And we'll get to our final point then. How do you do that? Let's say the offense has a clunky day. It wouldn't be the first in Vegas. They wouldn't be the first team to wake up hung over there, feel like your head's throbbing, too many slots, too many nights at the table, too many drinks that were colored blue or yellow or red, too many shots. You look like your helmet is going to explode. If your team has a day like that, how do you win? Well, the Broncos couldn't in the past. I'll tell you how they do now. Their defense could go out and win a game. Their defense, if their offense is not playing well, their defense could go out and win a game for them. And this is a matchup where they should get right. And they should eat. I mean, I'm talking about, where's A behind the screen? No crumbs left, A. That's what kind of defensive performance I'm looking for here. No crumbs left. You look at this Raiders offense. This is like every Broncos offense until last year. For 6 straight years, this was like what the Broncos were. The Raiders offense, 30th in yards per game, 29th yards per play, 24th in points per game at 18, 32nd, the worst rushing team in football at 75 yards per game. They've had 11 passes intercepted. That's 25th. They've lost 9 fumbles. They've had 20 giveaways. That's 31st. They've allowed 33 sacks. That's 27th. And their third down percentage is 24th. So let's see. Check. Bad. They're bad. And this defense is feeling itself right now. Nick Bonitto could end up this game. I could see this being his, coming out party 3-sack game. He had a game like that against Chicago last year, but would I be surprised that after on Sunday night, Nick Bonitto's leading the NFL in sacks? I would not. Would I be surprised if Pat Surtain or Riley Moss added to their interception total? I would not. Remember with last game, Broncos were down looking like they were on the ropes, and Pat Surtain returned an interception 100 yards against Gardner Minshew. That changed that game completely, and the Broncos just dominated. Minshew's back in there, and he has just struggled. I like Minshew as a backup. As a starter this year, it has just not worked for him. His numbers they're bad. I mean, he took better care of the ball, but this is the type of game you look at. What is the one way the Raiders could have an advantage? One place. That's Brock Bowers. But that's really all they have. Brock Bowers is one of the best targets in the NFL, not tight end, but targets. 70 catches, almost 1,000 yards. Do you realize, folks, as a rookie, he's on pace for 119 catches, 1,200 yards, and 5 touchdowns? Holy hell. He's going to break every tight end record in the NFL for a rookie. He's going to threaten some all-time tight end records, rookie or not. And when people say, well, the Broncos could have had him, stop. You're embarrassing yourself. They were not going to take a tight end and then build or rebuild movement around Zach Wilson. And I like Zach. I do. But these people, they could have had Brock Bowers and Zach Wilson. Oh, yeah, that's a great plan because that's worked so well for the Broncos with reclamation projects. Case Keenum, anyone? Joe Flacco, anyone? Come on. Teddy Bridgewater? Like, you had to start fresh with your guys. So I don't want to hear it. Miss me with that. If you're going to that person say they could have had Bowers and Zach Wilson, I'm not just, I don't hear you. I don't hear you. They're in such a better position with Bo Nix being their guy because of the contract, the way it sets up, the 5th-year option, not making any money. That starting next year, they're going to have financial flexibility. And then the year after that, it's going to be crazy financial flexibility because no Russell Wilson cap hit anymore. So, but that's a tangent. Give credit to Brock Bowers. I love the kid at Georgia. Sean Payton talked about going and watch a Georgia practice the year he was not coaching when he's working for Fox. At least he admitted he was out there because he got a free round of golf comp round at Augusta. He just didn't show up randomly at a Georgia Bulldogs practice so he could pet Uga and hang out with Kirby Smart. He was getting some golf, so I respect the hustle there. But you look at Bowers, he's unbelievable. But you got to have a plan for him. I think you got to think about Surtain being involved in that. You got to think of always doubling him with the safety because they have what? Jacoby Myers, that's really it. If you stop the run like you should and get pressure, there's going to be one guy they're looking to dump the ball to is Bowers, and he had a really nice game against the Broncos too a month ago. Put Surtain on him some. Double him if you need to. Don't just leave Cody Barton on him. That's not fair to Barton or Sternad. They're not that kind of guy. He's the only guy that can beat you, so don't let him get hot. Don't let him get into that. We look up at halftime, he's 7 for 102 and 2 touchdowns. There's no way that should happen. Now, and Vance Joseph, in fairness, as great as his defense has been this year, he's had issues covering the tight end. And I've asked him about this several times. And he basically says on the first 2 downs, like it's man up. And on 3rd down, you got to figure it out. That's more of a matchup down. But you have to be cognizant of this because he's really offensively the only guy that could put you in harm's way in terms of an upset. So make sure you have a plan. And for me, that plan would involve some Pat Surtain. Pat Surtain, folks, lined up at middle linebacker for a play last week. They move him around. They move him around in this position where it's like that rocket kind of star position where Jalen Ramsey used to do it, the Rams. You move him around. Don't be afraid to put him on Bowers. Don't be afraid of that. Because that's the only way you lose this game. And you look at the Broncos defense, some of these stats, I mean, they're third in yards per play, first in fewest yards, third in yards per game, first in yards per play. They're allowing 16 points a game. That's third in the NFL, only 98 yards rushing. Remember, at this time last year, they were allowing 150 yards rushing. That's where the improvements really come from. John Franklin Myers, Malcolm Roach, pairing up with Zach Allen and DJ Jones. It's completely changed the physicality of that defense because they're able to win up front at the line of scrimmage. But their pass defense, 190 yards. That's interceptions. They've got 8. That's tied for 12. Takeaways total, 13. They're tied for 12. I think this is a game where they get 3 takeaways. I think this is the type of game they're going to be able to get up early, 10-3, 17-7, and unleash the hounds. Unleash Benito. Unleash Cooper. He's due for a big game because they're probably going to chip Benito. But I still think Benito's going to win on his matchups. But one of those edge rushers between Ellis, Benito, and Cooper is going to have a multi-sack day. And when they have a multi-sack day, that means the ball's coming out crooked, wobbly, hurt. And that is where you're going to see a pick by Surtain or Moss. Folks, this all sets up for the Broncos to win their first game in Vegas. And they need it. You absolutely need it. Because you look at that schedule, you win that game, then you play, you got the Colts coming up, you got Cleveland coming up. You have a chance to get to 9-5 going into that last part of the schedule where you face Chargers now on Thursday night, as we talked about the first part of the program. Then you face the Bengals, which you could be a play-in game if you have any kind of misstep. And then you finish at home against the Chiefs. This is the time. This is the time. It's like a boxer getting ready for a title match. These are the tomato can games you got to win. These are the opponents you got to knock out. Don't mess around with the Raiders. Put your foot down. Put your foot on their chest. Take care of business. And that's what I think is going to happen. I have the Broncos 27-17 type game, 24-17, somewhere in there. I think they cover. I think they win, and they're comfortably ahead. Because of the takeaways, the defense, and the Bo show continues. Whoa, whoa, going down the road. Chugga, 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 chugga. Folks, I hope you enjoyed it. I could not do this pod without the great folks. Big A behind the screen, Nate Lundy of Mile High Sports. Also, A1 from Day One, Darby Hoggett, and our new sponsor, Bet Online. We appreciate them joining the show. Broncos in the stretch run. Time to turn Sin City into Win City. Broncos country, I do this pod for you. Happiness, that begins with me. Go out there and have a great day.